just need to ask, do I need to use a code word here like I do on TikTok?
No, we're on YouTube
Okay,
and
good.
on audio, not a problem. You can say whatever. I will
Okay,
probably, if we may like won't want just not in the description say anything about Retta, but
okay.
it's on YouTube, so I'll be careful.
All
I'll
right.
bleep you or
I
whatever.
usually, I'm now saying it's my Ratatouille trial.
Rich, that works.
I
I
really
think
like that better.
because this show is known to be like very like reputable,
Hmm.
I think that we can say the thing.
Okay. All
So
right. Lovely.
feel free, feel free. All right,
Okay. You let me know when you're ready.
you go.
Thank you. Hi there. My name is Mimi in Oz is my social media handle. And so I'm in Australia and I am 61 years young and mother of three, grandmother of two. And so I am currently a participant in the phase 3 Retatrutide clinical trial, which is the triple agonist, which has GLP, GIP and glucagon in it. So I was obese for probably at least half of my 61 years on this earth. My poor mother fully admits that when I was born, she had no idea what to do with me. So every time I opened my mouth, she put a bottle in it. So I was a very, very obese baby. And so I think that kind of started my journey of resolving all my problems with food and drink. But I did have a relatively normal weight during childhood and adolescence, although, when I was in secondary school, like all teenage girls, I thought I was fat and went on fad diets, but I really wasn't. And I maintained a pretty normal weight then until my first pregnancy. And then with each pregnancy, I would gain about 15 kilos or about 33 pounds, and I'd only lose 10 kilos or 22 pounds of that. So that was just the start of this ongoing cycle of just starting to gain weight over the years. And so when the kids were little, I worked permanent night shift for 10 years because in those days, that was the only way that you could get set shifts. Otherwise, I had to go on a 3-shift, 24/7 rotating roster, which was just impossible to coordinate with 3 small children and trying to organise childcare and stuff like that. And if you've ever done permanent night shift, you'll know how terrible that is for your body. And, like I would eat because I was so tired to try and feel better. And, it was not a wise thing to do. A big life event that happened for me was when I was 40. And by that stage, I had a 15-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a 10-year-old. And I was driving them to school one day, and so normally you would drive them and drop and run and head off to work. But for some reason that day, I had to go into the school grounds. I had to, I don't know, pay a bill or drop something off at the office, but there was something why I had to go into the school grounds. So I parked the car, the kids got out of the car, I went up to the office, did whatever it was that I had to do. And as I'm walking back down the pathway to the car park, I suddenly start feeling really dizzy. And then I start staggering like a drunk. And then I get this blinding headache. I lose hearing in my left ear. And the next thing I know, I'm waking up in hospital. And in hospital, they said, "Oh, look, your blood pressure's really high. We don't really know what's going on. Let's do some blood tests. Let's do a CT scan of your brain." And that all came back normal. And so they said, "Look, we'll send you home on some blood pressure tablets. Just see how you go over the next couple of weeks. And if things don't improve, go and see your local doctor." So I had 2 weeks of dizziness, nausea, just headaches, just feeling really horrible. And then I went to my local doctor after 2 weeks and said, "Look, this really isn't getting better." So she said, "Oh, look, maybe we should do a head CT with contrast this time." And they did that. And then that was when they found that I had a dead bit in my brain now, which was a demonstration that I had had a stroke. So the type of stroke that I had was a particularly not a typical type stroke, so I didn't get a droopy face and droopy arms. So I had what's called a PICA infarct, a posterior inferior cerebellar infarct. And so that's the part of your brain that controls balance and coordination and movement and things like that, which is why I had the, staggering around like the drunk and all the dizziness and things like that. So that's actually a type of stroke. And, I got slowly better over a couple of weeks, and fortunately didn't have any long-term deficits from it. And you would have thought that should have been a bit of a wake-up call to me to do something about my lifestyle. But I was a busy mum of 3 teenagers working full-time. And of course, you just put yourself on the back burner. And then, this was pretty much then a pattern of my life of eating and drinking my way through crises. So 2012, my husband decides to run away from home with another woman. So I eat and drink my way through that crisis. And then, of course, my focus was the kids and trying to get them through it and trying to hold on to the house so they didn't have to move and all those kind of things. And I really didn't have time to process anything for myself. So, yep, you just keep eating and drinking all the yucky feelings away. And then, the fog eventually lifted. And in 2018, I took myself off for my first overseas holiday as an adult and went to France for a month. And that was wonderful. But, I was happy there. And guess what? I also ate and drank my way through France as well, because who doesn't eat and drink their way through France? But when I get back from France, my BMI is 40. So when my pre-pregnancy BMI was 22. So I've gained I'm quite short. I'm only 160 centimetres or 5'3". So I've gained about 100 pounds over those years. It's quite a significant amount of weight. And so I went to my local doctor and said, please help me. I cannot do this on my own. And she said, well, look, there's this new drug out. It's called Saxenda. It involves giving yourself an injection every day. How do you feel about that? And I said, well, I'm a nurse. I have injections all day long. That's not a problem. And so to this local doctor's credit, she also did give me a referral to a dietitian and an exercise physiologist, which was great. She wasn't just solely relying on the medication. And so I started on the Saxenda. It worked really well for me. I lost about 10 kilos or about 22 pounds in 3 months. But unfortunately, at the 3-month mark, we were starting to get drug shortages here in Australia. And so the federal government came out and said, okay, sorry, we've got too many shortages. We're now limiting this drug to diabetics only. And so I got cut off cold turkey. And just for background, there are no GLP compounds at all in Australia. They are completely banned. You either have brand name or you have black market, literally. There is no in between. So I regained about 2/3 of the weight. Then COVID came in 2020, and I was working in a large public hospital as a nurse in infectious diseases. So I could not have been more in the front line, and I ate and drank my way through that as well, let me tell you. That was pretty horrendous. And so beginning of 2022, the borders are open again. And I thought, gee, I wonder if the limits on Saxenda have lifted a bit. And I couldn't get an appointment with my local doctor, so I went for a telehealth with a nurse practitioner group. And they said, oh, well, sounds like a good idea, but, we've got Ozempic now and it's only once a week, would be interested in that. And I went, oh, yeah, that sounds great. So I went on Ozempic. Same story. Was on it for 3 months, lost about 10 kilos or 22 pounds, and then shortages, Australian government cut us off completely. Fast forward to late 2023, and my eldest boy gets married and has a beautiful wedding. And I really liked my dress on the day and I felt really comfortable. But the wedding photos came back and I was horrified at how I looked. And I thought, I look like a potato. This is awful. I have to do something about this. So I start, doing a bit of research on the phone, thinking, oh, maybe, Ozempic's, a bit easier to get now or something. And because, your phone listens to you, all of a sudden, all these things start popping up on my Facebook feed on weight loss. But one of them catches my eye and it says, we're currently recruiting for weight loss clinical trials in your area. Click here to fill out an online form. So I click here to fill out an online form. And then about a week or so later, I get a phone call from the clinical trial coordinator, and she said, oh, okay, look, so this is a new medication that we're trialling. Have you heard of Ozempic? And I said, oh, yes, I've used that before. She said, oh, well, this is the new triple agonist. And I said, oh, okay, that sounds really interesting. And she said, but at this stage, we're only recruiting for people who've previously had a heart attack or stroke. I'm like, me, I've had a stroke. That's me. I've never been so excited about having had a stroke in my entire life. And she said, oh, all right, well, like what's your current weight and height and everything? And she worked out, because you had to have a BMI over 35, plus have had the previous stroke or heart attack. And she said, now, we're going to need something more than your word that you've had a stroke or heart attack. Have you got, some evidence? So I got my local doctor to email me through copies of my scans and things. And they said, okay, that looks good. We're going to bring you in for a visit. So the first visit was about 3 hours. And like the consent form for the trial was like 25 pages long. And they went through all of it. And it was exactly about how the trial was going to work, what my chances were of getting placebo, every possible side effect known to man,